Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate. After WikiLeaks and David Headley, where do India-Pakistan relations stand? That's one of the subjects I shall discuss today in this exclusive interview with the Foreign Secretary, Nirupama Rao. Foreign Secretary, let's start with Pakistan. Now that we have proof from WikiLeaks and Headley that the Pakistani state is directly and irrefutably involved in instigating and funding terror against India, what's the justification for continuing dialogue with that country?
Well, I think the justification for dialogue is by no means diminished, even despite these revelations. I believe that dialogue is the most effective means to tackle outstanding issues with Pakistan. And the abandonment of dialogue or the interruption of dialogue by no means serves the interests that we seek to pursue in getting Pakistan to stop its pursuit of terrorism against India. In other words, dialogue is the most intelligent means of addressing points of contention.
But if any dialogue is to be meaningful, surely you would agree that it has to be predicated on the fact that Pakistan accepts what it's been doing and, more importantly, promises not to do it again. That's missing in this case.
Well, Pakistan has from time to time made this commitment to us that it will not permit the pursuit and the encouragement of terrorism.
But it hasn't lived up to it. It keeps backing off.
Let me finish. By groups on its soil or territory under its control. I think over the last few occasions that we have had the opportunity to raise these issues with Pakistan, it's been made very clear to them and very emphatically to them that the atmosphere for the pursuit of this dialogue will never be really conducive until and unless they stop the pursuit of terrorism against India. So dialogue has served the purpose of putting across our deepest concerns to Pakistan.
But dialogue hasn't got you a cessation of terrorist activity from Pakistan. Dialogue hasn't even got Pakistan to accept that their state, in the shape and form of the ISI, is directly involved. Without that acceptance, aren't you in a sense knocking on a closed door?
Well, to some degree, there is an acknowledgement by Pakistan that the pursuit of terrorism directed against India is going to be negative. It's going to have a negative impact on the relationship. To that extent, I think there is some degree of acknowledgement. Now, let's take the Mumbai trials. We have had Pakistan acknowledge that the masterminds and the handlers of this attack came from Pakistan. And we have engaged with Pakistan over the last 1 year in the exchange of evidence and information relating to the Mumbai terror attacks. So obviously, the channels of communication that have remained open with Pakistan have served that purpose.
Except that has Pakistan come close to acknowledging that members of the state and the establishment, the ISI in particular, as both David Headley has confirmed and WikiLeaks have confirmed, have been directly involved in instigating terror against India? Has that critical acceptance come?
Well, we're still away from that critical acceptance. I would acknowledge that. But the fact is, now look at the international community, look at the international response to the role of agencies connected with the Pakistan state in the pursuit and encouragement of terrorism directed against India, directed against Afghanistan. Today, we are no longer like Cassandras, talking about terrorism emanating from Pakistan. There is a widespread groundswell of belief and conviction in the stand that we've taken and the acknowledgement by the international community that we are taking the right position.
And David Cameron's statement in India, in a sense, underlines that. I'll come to that in a moment's time. Let me bring up first a second major revelation that's been exposed by WikiLeaks. The fact that the Pakistani ISI has been involved in instigating terror against India in Afghanistan when General Kayani was head of the ISI. Today, the same General Kayani is Army Chief of Pakistan, and he's going to continue in that post till at least 2013. How do you view General Kayani?
Let me say that the role of official agencies from Pakistan in promoting terrorism against India is something we have been speaking of and drawing attention to for a long time now. It's not just that the WikiLeaks have come up with that revelation. It's been known to us for a long time. And we have said all along that the acts of premeditated violence against our nationals in Afghanistan are completely unacceptable to us.
What about this? many people in Pakistan and in India believe that General Kayani is inimical to this country. He's himself gone on record to say that under him the Pakistan army will be India-centric. Does the Indian Foreign Office share that assessment?
You know, we have 60 years of a troubled relationship with Pakistan. And I think we understand and we know that country better perhaps than any other country in the world. So we see through the glass darkly, no doubt, about the state of Pakistan and the conditions in which this relationship is operating at the moment. So to that extent, we understand the role of Pakistani state agencies in promoting terrorism against India.
So there's nothing about General Kayani that you don't understand, it's just that you may not want to say it publicly.
I think we understand the nature of these institutions and the personalities behind them very clearly.
On the other hand, he is also far and away the most important person in Pakistan. Is there a need for India to try and establish some direct line of contact with him?
Well, I've been asked that question on a number of occasions, and my answer to that is that we have dealt and we continue to deal with, and we will continue to deal with, the civilian democratic government in Pakistan, the elected representatives of the people there, and the civilian officials concerned. That is the interface that we have adopted.
But you won't side by side seek to open some line of contact with the military leadership or Kayani in particular?
Well, I'm not prepared to talk about that at the moment, but let me say that the interface as it exists is with the civilian government.
Let's widen our discussion. Given the nature of leaks that we've had, both from WikiLeaks and from David Headley, is it still sensible for India to rely on America to curb Pakistan?
I think the strategic partnership with the United States of America is of undoubted importance. There's no two opinions about that. And the cooperation that we have engaged in with the United States in a number of sectors, including counterterrorism, is being taken forward. But having said that, we are not dependent on any third country when it comes to transacting relations with Pakistan. We deal directly with Pakistan, and bilateral issues are taken up bilaterally with that country.
You mentioned the strategic relationship. Many people feel that, in fact, the Headley revelations and WikiLeaks shows that the credibility of America as a strategic partner might be under some sort of question today. Has America kept India informed? Did they do everything they could to curb the terror? Or were they aware of things that they didn't share and didn't respond to?
I think the manner in which we've been able to take this dialogue forward with the United States, the kind of cooperation that we have engaged in counterterrorism, has been to mutual benefit. There's no doubt about that.
Let's then talk about the developing situation in Afghanistan. Many analysts believe that as the situation becomes increasingly adverse for America, the Obama administration sees Pakistan as the key to the solution. Do you share the view that Obama's increasing dependence on Islamabad will give Pakistan an influence and leverage to work out, or at least determine, the final outcome in Afghanistan?
I don't believe you can paint those colors in a zero-sum way as far as Afghanistan is concerned. Firstly, Afghanistan is a fiercely independent country. And the takeaway we've had from meetings with the Afghan leadership in the recent past is that they are zealous about guarding that independence and in ensuring that the progress that they've made in Afghanistan over the last 9 years is not eroded in any manner.
Does this mean that they will check Pakistani influence themselves?
I believe that the international community has to stay committed in Afghanistan for some more time. They are dealing with the war against terror there. That war has to be fought, it has to be won. So I believe that there is a commitment here that the international community has to reinforce.
I'll tell you why I asked this question. Karzai famously has referred to Pakistan as a conjoined twin. Pakistan protects, promotes the Afghan Taliban and is today involved in trying to facilitate talks between the Haqqani and the Hikmatyar groups and the Karzai government. How does the Indian government view the possibility of Haqqani and Hikmatyar playing a role in a future Afghan government?
I think here again you're jumping to conclusions before things have happened. The red lines that were drawn at the at the London conference on Afghanistan earlier this year are the red lines that the Afghan government intends to adhere to and abide by. This has been said to us on a number of occasions. Now, the fact is that you have groups within the Afghan Taliban that are obviously close to Pakistan, that promote terrorism, that espouse radical ideologies. And I don't believe, given the approach of the Afghan government to adhering by those red lines, that this reality or this possible conclusion that you referred to is really going to come about.
Except for the fact that the Afghan government has itself been holding, albeit surreptitiously, but not by any means secretly, talks with Haqqani groups and Hikmatyar group representatives.
Well, I'd put it this way. I think that the situation in Afghanistan, given the operation of so many groups there, is complex. But let me say once again that this is a fiercely independent country that you're dealing with, and a leadership that is fiercely independent and is not going to, I believe, compromise its basic interests in ensuring a strong, a stable and united Afghanistan, which is not going to be bedevilled by the threat of terrorism.
Now, as you know, Foreign Secretary, Pakistan has long wanted what it calls strategic depth in Afghanistan. Many people believe that America today, perhaps out of a certain sense of desperation, is coming close to accepting Pakistan's primacy in Afghanistan. And if that happens, that would be granting strategic depth. If that strategic depth were granted, what would it mean for India? Help us understand. What would it mean if that was achieved?
First of all, let me tell you that this so-called strategic depth that you refer to is not a theory espoused by anybody in the international community. There may be some analysts in Pakistan, some
General
people
Kayani
in Pakistan.
talks about it.
Well, they may talk about it, but I'm talking about the reality. You're talking about an independent country. You're talking about a leadership in Afghanistan that is committed to fight terrorism, that is committed to maintain its independence. And I think that leadership needs to be helped in that regard.
So you don't believe that this talk of conjoined twinship, which was Karzai's phrase, and at that same time he only referred to India as a friend, not a twin, suggests that there is in fact a movement taking place that is one that perhaps India may be a little wary of. You don't share that?
I'm very alert to obviously to what happens in Afghanistan. It is a neighbor. We have interests there. We've had interests there for a very long time that predate the present situation there. So let me say that being friends as we are with Afghanistan, and this is a very deep friendship, it's a friendship that is cemented by bonds between people, not just between governments. And we are confident about our profile in Afghanistan and the fact that our interests will be well recognized by the international community, and this is increasingly evident in the dialogue that we have with our key partners.
One last question before I take a break. How do you view the stepped up military relationship between America and Pakistan? And if you have concerns, have you shared them with Washington? And what response have you got?
Well, we have shared our concerns with Washington. We have said all along that Pakistan cannot be given a blank check in such matters, and any assistance that is extended to Pakistan for ostensibly for counterinsurgency and counterterrorism operations could very well be used against India, as the history of the last 60 years go.
And what did Washington say?
Washington is very attentive to our concerns, and we have continued our dialogue on this issue. We are engaged in a constant communication with the United States on these issues, and I believe that the United States is increasingly aware and alert and attentive to these concerns.
Except that arming Pakistan continues as a policy.
Well, there is a situation now in Afghanistan, and there is the involvement of the United States in that situation, and Pakistan is involved in that entire operation. So there is a certain context now in which all this is placed. But nonetheless, our concerns about it have been articulated very clearly to the Americans.
Sounds as if we have to grit our teeth a little about things we don't like. Let's take a break at that point. I want to come back and talk to you about the other critical relationship that you handle, India and China. We'll be back in a moment's time. See you after the break. Welcome back to Devil's Advocate and an exclusive interview with the Foreign Secretary, Nirupama Rao. Foreign Secretary, let's come to China. On the one hand, China is India's single biggest trading partner, and the two countries hope to hit the $60 billion target this year. On the other hand, China supports Pakistan over Kashmir. It bends laws to sell nuclear plants to Islamabad, whilst it questions India's sovereignty over Arunachal Pradesh and seems to go out of its way to check our emergence as a leading power. How do you as Foreign Secretary view China?
It is a complex relationship, there's no doubt about it. But having said that, and especially since we celebrate the 60th anniversary of our diplomatic relations this year, let me say the approach as we move forward is to ensure, and this is a point of view which is shared by the Chinese government, ensure mutual sensitivity to each other's core concerns, as well as to seek broader convergence on many global issues. So this is the trajectory along which the relationship is developing.
But are they really sensitive to India's concerns, particularly Kashmir, particularly the arming of Pakistan, particularly the supply of proliferation nuclear material to Pakistan? Are they
well, that's exactly the context I referred to when I spoke of the complexity in the relationship. And what does dialogue, intelligently transacted dialogue, enable you to do when you seek more responsiveness from the other side about your concerns? This is exactly so that we are able to place these issues in context and to seek the other side's focus on these issues and greater responsiveness and sensitivity to these issues.
The former National Security Advisor Brajesh Mishra has gone on record to say that he fears Islamabad and Beijing may be joining forces, and if that happens, he thinks India will end up with hostile neighbors both in the north and the west. To what extent do you share that concern?
Well, I know that there is a lot of analyses on the various scenarios that could be applied to the India-China relationship. But here in officialdom, we deal with realities. And let me tell you, the reality of the situation is that the border between India and China has been peaceful for the last few decades. And the effort from both sides is to ensure that the mechanisms that we've put in place for confidence building and for the maintenance of peace and tranquility work well. And there is constant communication between the two sides.
So are you saying that the fear or the...
But let me add that this doesn't mean that we are not vigilant about or alert to situations where our security could be affected.
So you are aware of the possibility of what in loose language I might call a ganging up between Islamabad and Beijing. You don't turn a blind eye to it.
Well, we take all these factors into account.
China today, in fact just 10 days ago, became the world's second largest economy. Does India have any apprehensions or concerns about China's emergence as possibly the second most powerful country in the world?
Well, I think you and I belong to a generation that has been witness to the rise of China, the growth in its economic power, its power projection capabilities. We've been witness to all that. And at the same time, the world is increasingly alert to the rise of India, the potential of India, the rapid economic growth of India.
But the gap between the two is growing, it's not narrowing.
And I believe what that points to, Karan, is the fact that this relationship, the relationship between India and China, is going to be the big story of the 21st century.
A story that will be in India's interest, or a story which will make India wary and perhaps a little apprehensive?
Well, a story based on dialogue, as I said, which we intend to conduct intelligently and which we intend to conduct with confidence so that our concerns are protected
Is
always.
China dialoguing with India openly, or are they doing it behind screens?
I believe there is a multi-sectoral dialogue with China on the bilateral front, and if you look at the global multilateral front, there are increasing areas of convergence. I referred to that. And so this is really, as I said, the trajectory along which we hope the dialogue develops.
Foreign Secretary, a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.